What would be the implications of that sacred bond, that unbreakable promise, that mutual commitment and connection, if we were to take it seriously? What are the implications of a sacred bond, an unbreakable promise, a mutual commitment and connection with the Creator, with the whole human family, and with all living things? What are the implications of such a thing as the basis for life-giving relationships if we take it seriously? To tell you the truth, it shouldn't be a surprise to us in our tradition. If you go back to the creation story at the beginning of the Bible, you find a repeating litany declaring the goodness of all creation. The text declares, "And God saw that it was good," no less than 6 times. After "let there be light," good. After the emergence of land masses and seas, good. After the appearance of vegetation, good. After the creation of the sun and moon, good. And by the way, that's one way you know that this is poetry and not science, because the sun shows up after all the plants. But anyway, after sea creatures and birds of every kind, good. After land animals, living creatures of every kind, it says good. Even after us. For the 7th time, the text declares, God saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good. The point is, in the creation story and in the story of the lost covenant of Noah, human beings are pictured as embedded in creation, part of a complex web of covenant with God, with one another, and with all living things. This is the life-giving pattern. This is the not-so-hidden code written in these texts. And on our DNA, we are part of the life-giving network of life and of all things living on the earth, not separate from them. Our physical and spiritual well-being, our lives and our souls depend on recognizing this sacred bond, this unbreakable promise between God and us and every living thing, before it's too late. You know, it's striking to me that Jesus' ministry begins with so many earth images and with a kind of vision quest in the wilderness. In today's brief reading alone from the first chapter of the Gospel of Mark, we find the river, immersion in water, the heavens or sky, a flying dove, the wilderness, and wild beasts, which the children modeled for us really well today. So, immediately after his immersion in the river, it says, the Spirit drove him out into the wilderness. It was essential in some way that Jesus spend time in the wilderness before beginning his ministry. There, we are told, while in solitude, he was tempted by the evil one. There's a similar story from the Buddhist tradition about the last temptation of the Buddha before he is enlightened. As he sits under the Bodhi tree, Mara, the personification of evil in that tradition, tempts him in every way to give up. When that fails, Mara attacks his sense of worthiness, demanding to know who he thinks he is to be, trying to be enlightened and all that stuff. The Buddha doesn't defend himself. Knowing his weaknesses, he simply touches the earth, calling on the goodness of the earth to bear witness to him. And the earth responds, I bear witness, and Mara flees. For some reason, in the Christian tradition, the wilderness and the wild beasts mentioned in Mark's story are usually interpreted as another expression of the dangers Jesus faced during his temptation. But I don't really see it that way, thinking about all these things. John the Baptist's entire ministry took place out in the wilderness by the Jordan, so surely Jesus was comfortable there. In the Gospels, you often see him going off alone to pray, walking by the sea, or across the sea, right? Through a storm. His teachings are filled with references to nature. So when it comes to the wild beasts, surely he was aware of the goodness of creation expressed in his own tradition, in Noah's covenant, and in Isaiah's vision of a time to come when the wolf shall live with the lamb and the leopard lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion together. And they will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, Isaiah said, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of God as the waters cover the sea. Surely Jesus was aware of that. Surely the writers of the Gospels were aware of that. So I imagine the scene of Jesus' temptation more like this. As the evil one comes to tempt him in every way, tempt him to serve his own needs, his own desires, his own glory, the same temptations that we often face in our lives. The wild beasts gather around him.